Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. US President Donald Trump has reportedly told European leaders that Vladimir Putin has no interest in peace in Ukraine. Trump made the comments during a call with European partners on Monday. Our correspondent, Alex Kadir, is following the story from Brussels and has more.
Well, the US President Donald Trump reportedly told European allies, including Emmanuel Macron of France, Donald Tusk of Poland, and the European Commission President, that Vladimir Putin has no desire to make peace because he thinks he is winning the war. Now, that's according to reporting in the Wall Street Journal. Getting confirmation of that has been very difficult from European leaders. Donald Tusk himself on the call said he cannot confirm exactly what was said in that conversation, but he has said there is no trace of goodwill from Russia when it comes to making peace. Well, I went to ask the European Commission to see if I could get more details on whether or not Donald Trump said that on that call with European leaders. Here's what the chief spokesperson of the European Commission had to say.
President Trump had a debrief call with several European leaders, including President von der Leyen, and shared the outcome of that call. Not aware of all the details. What is important also to note is that they agreed on next steps, notably on the fact that there would be direct talks between Ukraine and Russia with the participation of the European counterparts.
So that is Brussels spokesperson language for I will either not confirm or I don't know if that was discussed on the call. But again, echoing what Prime Minister Tusk has said, that Vladimir Putin has showed no intention to negotiate in good faith towards a peace settlement for his invasion of Ukraine. So the question, of course, now becomes what next? The US, despite this acknowledgement that Vladimir Putin does not want peace, has decided not to lay out fresh sanctions against the Kremlin, and therefore the question is, will the Europeans step up? Ukraine wants them to do so. Again, I asked the European Commission. You said there will be a new, stronger, bigger package, the 18th package of sanctions against Russia. When will it come? As soon as possible was the response. I asked, well, okay, will it be back? Will it be ready by the end of June when the leaders are meeting? No response from the Commission. We don't know what is going to be in that package of sanctions. Perhaps sanctions against the Shadow Fleet, against Nord Stream to further hit the Russian economy, but no clarity quite yet. All we have is as fast as possible, but for people in Ukraine, that may not be fast enough. In Brussels, I'm Alex Kadir for TVP World.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk also addressed the issue, but did not directly confirm whether Donald Trump told European leaders that Vladimir Putin has no interest in achieving peace in Ukraine.
I do not confirm such a statement, but I can confirm that the situation is difficult because on the Russian side there is no trace of goodwill, especially regarding the immediate cessation of hostilities. Second, there has been no commitment to honest peace negotiations. Both President Trump and other countries have set a clear condition, a ceasefire without preconditions. In other words, before talks can begin, the fighting should stop immediately, as should the unnecessary deaths. This was, in fact, an initiative by President Trump, but it was accepted as self-evident by President Zelensky and the four of us. However, the Russians have resorted to their classic tactics of dragging things out and sowing deliberate confusion, so as not to commit to a ceasefire or serious peace talks. The situation is difficult, but I wouldn't say it is critical, as it has been challenging from the very beginning.
Speaking to Slawa TV, the Ukrainian-language station of Poland's public broadcaster TVP, Ivan Krastev, chairman of the Center for Liberal Strategy in Sofia, discussed the future of Western support for Ukraine. He addressed whether Washington will continue its backing and if Europe could carry the responsibility alone should the U.S. step back. In his view, it is unlikely that the United States would abandon Ukraine at this stage.
I do believe that Europeans are trying to play the game which is going to keep the Americans involved. For many reasons. One is that when you try to capabilities, while Europe can do many things and many more things, Europe cannot replace what the Americans are doing for Ukraine. This is true particularly when it comes to air defenses, and on the other, of course, is very much about intelligence. But what we are seeing is that the United States, while they're not ready to escalate with respect to Russia, I don't believe that the United States also has made their mind that basically they're going to leave Ukraine and try to make it easier for President Putin to get what he wants.
During a visit to Norway's Romsund Naval Station, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte emphasized the need for increased defense spending among alliance members. He also warned that Russia is, quote, actively reconstituting itself.
We know that China is building up its armed forces. We have the terrorist threat. So there are so many reasons why we have to spend more based on an in-depth understanding of the targets we need to reach, the gaps we have at the moment, and we need to fill them, and that will mean spending much, much more than the famous 2% which we committed in 2014. And also we know we have to spend more when it comes to defense-related spending. Not more spending because we want to spend more, but because we have to deliver the capabilities we collectively as NATO need to deliver to make sure that we are not only safe today, but also in 3 years, in 5 years, and 7 years from now, knowing that Russia is actively reconstituting itself.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz visited Vilnius on Thursday morning for the inauguration of Germany's Lithuania Brigade. Around 5,000 German troops are expected to be stationed there to help secure NATO's eastern flank and strengthen the European Union's defense posture.
Lithuania's President Gitanas Nausėda welcomes Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Defense Minister Boris Pistorius to Vilnius. They made the trip to formally mark the establishment of a German brigade in the country.
First of all, we are helping to strengthen all of NATO's entire eastern flank, and we are of course prepared to provide further military assistance to the Ukrainian army. A shortage of financial resources will not be the cause of failure for this.
By the end of this year, 500 German soldiers are expected to be on the ground. The move comes as America refocuses its priorities on the Asia-Pacific and away from Europe.
We share with the Chancellor our strong support for the transatlantic link, and we realize that the withdrawal of American troops would create additional threats for the security of the eastern flank.
Establishment of the so-called Lithuania Brigade represents Germany's first permanent foreign troop deployment since the Second World War. The goal is to deploy some 5,000 German troops in the country, helping strengthen the EU and NATO's eastern border.
Let our unity remain our greatest power.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk took part in an emergency briefing with the Polish Navy. Earlier this week, Poland deployed forces in the Baltic to deter a Russian shadow fleet vessel that was acting suspiciously near undersea power cables. Our reporter Avidush Nichea was at the briefing at the Naval Operations Center in Gdynia and has this report.
The Polish army is stepping up security measures in the Baltic Sea following an incident involving Russian shadow fleet vessel. The Polish Prime Minister has attended an emergency briefing with the Polish Navy and has announced that the Polish Navy will acquire additional drones to be able to better monitor the situation around Poland's critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. The recent incident involves Russian shadow fleet vessel, which made suspicious maneuvers around Poland's critical infrastructure, around a power cable that connects Poland with Sweden. According to Polish authorities, the army intervened and was able to successfully deter that ship, which later returned to a port in Russia. Let's take a listen to Prime Minister at the emergency briefing in Gdynia.
We have made the decision to immediately initiate the procurement of drones for the Polish Navy. These are very complex platforms that will allow us to effectively monitor what is happening underwater, on the water and above the water at much lower cost than when we have to deploy specialized ships. After listening to the recommendations of high-ranking naval officers, we are giving the green light to proceed.
Now, the Russian shadow fleet vessels are used by Moscow reportedly to export oil at prices which are above the price cap set by the Western nations. And in order to make it harder to circumvent these sanctions, the European Union and the United Kingdom are taking additional measures to sanction the so-called Russian shadow fleet.
And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But coming right up, our flagship business program, Bottom Line, with our very own Marie Cato. So please stay tuned to TVP World.